So, in our stories that we read for today, many of these deal with how relationships are fostered. And for many of our protagonists, the woman especially, there's a fear of marriage and all that it entails: the new relationship, the possible loss of freedom, and the expectations and unknowns of the wedding night. So, let's take a look at the riddle. If you think about what women had to lose through marriage, their independence, and in most cases, contact to their family, only to be expected to become, in some sense, a domestic servant and caretaker, or in wealthier states, a manager of the home, it's not surprising that there is a reluctance on their part to find a mate. Or if they must, then to make sure that they find the right one, if they really want to find one at all. So, to keep that spam mail filter equivalent of suitors out of the picture, most princesses set out a rigorous test so that only the most sincere persist. The princesses also don't want dolts. So, in our tale of the riddle, our princess has the utmost confidence that no one can best her intelligence. And this is where we see the practice of the unfair riddle, a riddle that really isn't a riddle at all, much like the Baggins, what have I got in my pocket? That's not a riddle with clues one can deduct, but purely something that can be guessed by chance. There are rules to this courtship, however, and one is that there is a go-between. The second is the custom of hospitality. So the prince and his servant ask to spend the night in the cottage, cannot be declined, and they're helped by the daughter. And then there's this parting drink, and then the prince rides off. Well, he rides off. That's not very heroic, running away, leaving the servant behind. Luckily, they were rescued from being killed and probably would have died themselves had they stayed and eaten the poisoned food. As the servant returns for the saddle, however, he spots a raven eating a dead horse. And the raven gives us this clear signal that there's this witch that was part of the old ways, paganism. And it's associated with Odin, perhaps Sebulba, Ceres, who oversees the rites of the dead. So this raven then serves to kill the band of 12 murderers who arrive, and only the girl is left in the house with the treasure. But then where has the witch gone? So the prince refuses to wed the woman in the woods, and you see here a refusal to return to the old ways. So how does the prince then, when he gets to this castle, win the game of the riddle? Well, by asking the unfair riddle that relies upon sheer luck rather than reason. How does the princess usually win the riddling contest when she cannot reason it out? Well, easy. She cheats. She uses a cloak to hide her presence and hopefully overhear what he is mumbling in his sleep. And her curiosity and desire to win places her in the most precarious of positions, sneaking into the most intimate space imaginable at night, his bedchambers. So with evidence presented of her cheating or of being there, those cloaks that she left behind, and at the same time, her fulfillment of answering the riddle, well, they are both shown to be equally deceptive and, in a weird sense, a good match. Although probably not how you would want to start a long-term relationship with someone. Now let's move on to Rapunzel. In the Grimm's version of Rapunzel, we have the theft of really good-looking lettuce that was believed to have been or have had some type of medicinal properties, just like the juniper tree was thought to be a healing tree. The gardens of a midwife would most likely have contained this kind of medicinal herb, and the profession of midwifery was also known to be associated with witchcraft, or was accused of that because of this. And the other aspect of this plant is its addictive qualities, something that the teller of the tale could have been alluding to. The rope ladder made of hair produces a second interesting point in that relationship between the witch and Rapunzel, who has been secluded from all men in a manner that depicts the privileging of chasteness for the middle class. The daughters of the wealthy were often used to forge alliances so that they were also treated as strategic pieces whose value was in part derived from their chasteness and ability to bear offspring. This explains how Gothel views Rapunzel and why she becomes angry at finding out that she has had a visitor who has been allowed to climb her hair. Gothel blinds the young man, deceiving him and emasculating him, which then sets up the subsequent scene that demonstrates the compassion in Rapunzel's voice, not the superficial beauty she has that can heal him, along with her tear, which is also that emotional, compassionate side of her that allows him to then see the world differently. So if we consider the importance of hair culturally, this hair that is climbed. It's so central to the story. Hairstyles have historically been used to indicate sexual preference, group identity, and self-expression, as well as the metaphors and language surrounding these practices. So, for example, in the early 20th century England, the phrase "to let one's hair down" or "keep one's hair up" indicated the status and openness of one's sexuality, much like whether one was out or closeted in America. During the 1960s countercultural revolution, this very similar expression, to let one's hair down, was synonymous with adopting more free, open, relaxed, and sometimes positive attitude towards sex. Now, if we move on to Faithful Johannes, it's a very odd tale. It's much like the medieval epic of Tristan and Isolde and many other fairy tales in which there is talk about beauty, a dangerous beauty, far from one's own home, and it becomes a quest or a conquest to try and bring that beauty home. And in this instance, we have the portrait playing a central role. And just as it continues in today's online dating, whether it's Tinder or Match, whatever it is today, even catfishing, the picture is what makes the strongest first impression and leads to further interest. And in this case, luring the money and summary abduction. What sparks the king's interest is the forbidden room with the picture. Again, it becomes attractive precisely because it's considered taboo, it's dangerous, it's the one thing that he's not allowed to do. And so whether it is Lancelot or Tristan or Cyrano, those who spend time together often become familiar and affectionate with one another. And in this case, the go-between reaches farcical proportions. He can kill the king's horse, burn a wedding gown. Then after the evening of glaring at the beauty of the queen all night, he takes her up to a room and lies her on a bed and then has her nurse him in some way as to bringing her back to life. Any arbitrary observer would consider this sabotage, treasonous. And then the king and queen thereafter should willingly murder their sons for their trusted servant. That seems rather unbelievable. Though the practice of offering your firstborn son to a deity is found mentioned in quite a few religions, here it just seems kind of out of place. The tale undermines the other epic tales of romance in that the servant here acts as a scoundrel, but then this is juxtaposed with loyalty. What is missing are the lines that would have made him more of like a trickster character, like the brave little tailor. So in the end, it can be read either by as loyalty that knows no bounds, or perhaps he is a scoundrel that is, he's not only tricked the king, but the narrator as well, and us as the audience, into believing that his motivations are of the purest kind.